History tells the story of the world and of our lives. Sometimes that history goes bump in the night. Broadcasting from the center of oddity and the supernatural in Central Florida, it's the History Goes Bump podcast.
Hello, you spooktacular people. Welcome to this 567th episode of the History Goes Bump podcast, Ghost Tours for the Theater of the Mind. I'm your host, Diane.
And this is Kelly.
Kelly, on this episode, we're going to a small town in Texas. We're going to check out the 1886 Olde Park Hotel, and that's old with an E.
Oh, very cool.
This place supposedly has 30 spirits hanging around in it.
Wow.
So we're going to meet a lot of different spooks. Before we get into that, we want to welcome into the spooktacular crew Slightly Odd Fitchburg, whose real name is actually Ed, Christina with a CH, Jen with 2 N's, Philip with 2 L's, and Anne.
Thank you so much for joining the spooktacular crew.
Our local radio show likes to play parodies every so often, and they played this one the other morning, and I thought it was perfect for the way that we deliver our welcomes to the spooktacular crew, Kelly, because so many people spell their names in unusual ways. Here we go.
I'd love to get my husband a personalized keychain for Christmas, but his name is Jeff. Geoff.
Then come on down to the oddly spelled named gift kiosk at your local mall. We've got something for every weird name on your list, like coffee mugs for Mark with a C or pot holders for Jennifer with 1 N.
Do you have a mini license plate for my daughter Emily? My wife insisted we spell it Emmalee.
Of course. And we offer 15 different spellings of Haley.
Finally, a place to shop for my sister-in-law, Aimee, Amy.
They never spell her name right on the Starbucks cup. But we've got Caitlin with a K and 2 N's covered at the oddly spelled name gift kiosk. I guarantee you'll find what you're looking for, or my name isn't Brian with a Y.
And now this moment in Oddity.
The moment in Oddity was suggested by Michael Rogers. There is a very strange tower of a home located just outside of Talkeetna, Alaska. The home looks like it came straight out of a children's book. The outward appearance looks like 12 different homes all stacked on top of each other, with each subsequent house smaller than the last. This is why it's known by locals as the Dr. Seuss house. The house itself has no correlation to the actual author. However, the whimsical nature of the building structure is the reason for the moniker. The home stands a towering 185 feet high. The creator and builder, Philip Widener, calls the structure his poem to the sky. There are various ladders and staircases to the different levels, which, according to what you are traversing, have a total of 14 to 17 floors respectively. The home is still currently under construction, and due to the owner's day job as one of Alaska's top trial lawyers, Widener finds it difficult to find the time needed to complete this unusual structure. He surmises, however, that once it is complete, he and his family will enjoy the tower, and he looks forward to sitting atop it to enjoy the northern lights in the future. We definitely recommend looking up photos of this unique home, because it certainly is odd.
This history podcast is haunted.
And now this month in history.
In the month of December, on the 13th in 1835, Phillips Brooks was born. He was born into a wealthy New England family. He graduated from Harvard in 1855, and after a brief stint as a school teacher at the Boston Latin School, he began to study for his ordination in the Episcopal Church in 1856. While in seminary, Brooks preached at Sharon Chapel in Fairfax County, Virginia. After graduating in 1859 from the Virginia Theological Seminary, Phillips Brooks became an ordained deacon, and in 1860 he became an ordained priest. His sermon at Harvard's commemoration of the Civil War's dead garnered Brooks nationwide recognition. After time spent in Germany, Brooks spoke of thrilling music and thrilling incense during church services. He encouraged many aspects of the liturgical movement, including congregational singing during the liturgy. Phillips Brooks had several publications based upon sermons and preachings he had delivered, but one thing he is most well known for today is his authoring of the Christmas carol, O Little Town of Bethlehem, which was based on the text that Phillips Brooks wrote in 1868.
The Olde Park Hotel has stood for over 130 years in Ballinger, Texas, which is known as the greatest little town in Texas.
You almost got ready to say greatest little whorehouse in Texas, huh?
Oh my gosh, no. From the outside, the hotel looks pretty unpretentious, but it has a storied history. The building has housed not only a hotel, but a brothel, a boarding house, school, restaurant, and antique store. Today, it is run as an event host that can be rented. This is mostly for ghost hunts because this hotel is said to be one of the most haunted hotels in Texas. Join us for the history and hauntings of the Olde Park Hotel.
Ballinger, Texas was a railroad town. The Gulf, Colorado, and Santa Fe Railway built a line west from Brownwood that terminated in a new town they built. They decided to name the town for a stockholder in the railroad company, Galveston attorney William Pitt Ballinger. The line was completed in 1886, and the town would be incorporated in 1892. Ballinger is home to one of the few Carnegie libraries still operating in its original building.
Wow.
That is amazing. This opened in 1909 with funds from Andrew Carnegie. The town's economy exploded around cotton production and the railroad. Soon saloons were popping up, and outlaws started showing up. Gun battles happened occasionally. The current downtown historic district features a courthouse square with many buildings dating back to the late 1800s. These buildings include not only the library, but the Texas Theater, the historic post office, the county building, and City Hall. And then there's the Olde Park Hotel.
Pinning down a history of the hotel is very difficult. A flood in 1905 wiped out the official records in Ballinger. As we said, the hotel is unpretentious. The architectural style is hard to describe and pretty simple. Clearly, this is a building that has been added onto through the years. It is believed that it started as a white, two-story house that existed before 1886, as it appears in a picture dated before that time. The house would become a hotel in 1886, known as the Three Sisters Hotel.
And I think when we say house, I don't know that it was like one person's house. It might have been more like a boarding house. But again, we don't even know when it was built or why it was built. But it was one of the only structures in this picture. So it definitely was one of the first things ever built in the town. The reason why it's so hard to describe architecturally is because I think the two buildings that are kind of on the back of it that seem to have been attached were brought over from a ghost town that was nearby that had gone defunct. So I don't even know what those buildings had originally been or when they were built either.
Ballinger would become a rough and tumble place that outlaws gravitated towards. The hotel would be multi-purposed into a bordello twice, and the first time would have been in the 1800s. Outlaws more than likely stayed at the hotel, especially when it was a brothel. These outlaws could have included Sam Bass, who committed the biggest train robbery in U.S. history, the Newton Boys, who were bank and train robbers, and had stolen more than any other gang at the time they were caught, Bonnie Parker and Clyde Barrow. John Wesley Hardin was a gunfighter who killed his first man at age 15. Emmanuel Manning Clements headed the ruthless Clements family, who were cattle rustlers and gunfighters. And Jim Killer Miller, a.k.a. the Deacon, who was a gunfighter. He got his nickname because he attended church and didn't drink or smoke. But he was a killer.
I know. It's so great.
Hey?
You know, he's more like a deacon because he doesn't drink or smoke. His only vice is that he, murders people. But hey, he's a good guy. I mean, he has two nicknames, Killer and the Deacon.
Yeah, okay. One of these things is not like the other.
Although his name rhymes, so that's kind of cool. Killer Miller.
Okay. Bonnie Parker grew up in a nearby town, and that's why it is thought that she and Clyde had stayed here at some point.
When Prohibition started, the hotel became a place for bootlegging. Sometime in the early 1900s, Washington Hampton Seacrest II owned the hotel and called it the Seacrest Hotel. The Keel family, and they spell it like John Keel, so I wonder if the Mothman was hanging around her.
Maybe.
They would buy it in 1922, and they owned it for multiple generations. The hotel would get the name Olde Park Hotel at that time, and clearly it stuck. And I don't know why they decided to throw the E on there, maybe just to makes it look a little bit more fancy.
Ye Olde Park Hotel.
I guess. It's definitely not a fancy-looking hotel. The history of the hotel also claims that this was called the Royal Hotel at some point, and that the building would serve as a meeting house, boarding house, schoolhouse, restaurant, music store, a brothel for a second time, and antique store. And I have no idea in what order that went, what dates those were, but that's what you read everywhere. And it's definitely a big enough location for them to have had all different kinds of things housed in there, maybe multiple things at one time. Jeanette Finley Trueheart was the owner who bought the hotel and opened it as an antique store. In 2016, Dan and Connie Lefebvre purchased the building from Jeanette. That couple had begun their ghost hunting team in 2009 called Graveyard Shift Paranormal Investigations, and that's why they were attracted to the hotel. They focused early on with local private hauntings. They branched out to bigger locations, and the ghost town of Helena, Texas, became one of their favorite places to investigate. Dan has penned 4 books, one of which is about the Olde Park Hotel, and actually I think 2 of them might be about the Olde Park Hotel. One's more about the history, and the others are more of I think people's ghost stories about it or something. They were looking for a place to live, and they really loved the feel of Ballinger. It had this small town feel. And Dan said there was just something about the building that kept calling to him. I always find it fascinating that these haunted locations seem to call to people who get attached to them and love it and just renovate it and make it something better. So then it's like, I have a feeling these people are going to be haunting it when they pass away too.
Maybe. The couple renovated the 10,000 square foot hotel, creating 10 themed rooms. There is the pink room upstairs that is also known as Helen's Azalea Suite Room, in honor of Helen Keel. The green room is upstairs and is the only room with original furniture from the Keel family. There's also a doll in there called Ginny. Not a creepy doll.
They have a doll room, Kelly. With lots of
not be staying in
them
that
in
room.
there. And I think several of them might have that little moniker of haunted on them.
Oh. The Rice Marriott room is also known as the Red Room and is decorated with red and white pinstripes and was named in honor of the son of a previous owner of the hotel. The Yellow Room was also named Iona's Oleander Suite, named after Jeanette's grandmother, Iona. There's a doll named Abigail in there. Downstairs is the Lefebvre's Master Suite, and it's decorated in gold and burgundy. Preston's parlor was once Jeanette's grandson's room. The Pruitt Wildflower Room is named after Tex Pruitt Keel, who is one of John and Virginia Keel's sons. The Crisco's French Bordello is named after Jack and Juanita Crisco and has blue and gold colors and a haunted mirror. The presentation room has a 10-foot movie screen, and there's also the Seacrest Sitting Room, Anne's Theater, and Virginia's Country Kitchen.
So as you can see, all of these rooms have been inspired by previous owners' names. So that's kind of how you get a feel for the history of who probably owned this place, is based on the names of the rooms. Now, despite having all of these rooms, the hotel is not run like a traditional hotel. The hotel is run as a haunted venue that can be rented for an evening. And everywhere that I was reading about it, it was a very affordable place to rent out for the whole evening or for a whole weekend.
Road trip.
So you actually can stay in the rooms. They are set up. I mean, you can sleep in the beds and everything. It's not like staying at the Villisca Axe murder house where we're like, I don't even want to get on top of this comforter. This is like a real place where you can, use the restroom and sleep in the bed and everything, but you have to be doing it because you're investigating the place. There are claims of over 24 spirits at this hotel. Talk of haunting activity has been going on in Ballinger for decades. When Jeanette had the antique store, people would ask if they could go upstairs, and when they came back down, they would ask if the place was haunted. Many customers would tell her that they saw somebody walking around upstairs who would disappear. There was also the spirit of an older gentleman who liked to sit in an armchair on the second floor. And a woman in a period dress was seen by a customer, and she assumed she was dressed up since this was an antique shop. So she went up to her to ask about a price, and the woman disappeared.
Not very helpful.
Yeah.
They need to find a new employee.
It's like, hello, I just need a price check here, and she just takes off. Also, during the antique store days, there was a doll kept in the main storeroom that was not for sale. That was because the porcelain doll belonged to the current owner's mother, and she once witnessed it levitate between two shelves of its own accord.
Oh, wow.
You
Okay.
ain't going with anybody. A psychic told Jeanette that there were 30 spirits in the hotel, so that's where we're getting the idea that there are 30 spirits here.
The LaFaves had experiences right from the beginning that continue. They decided to share the building with other paranormal enthusiasts. Part of the reason we have hauntings going on here is that Dan has brought in a lot of haunted objects, including dolls, and some of the wood they used for renovating came from the ghost town of Runnels. Location is also involved as the hotel is right across from the courthouse where criminals were hanged back in the day. That first night that Dan and Connie stayed in the hotel, they slept in the downstairs owner's suite. Dan was awakened by something caressing his scalp. He at first thought it was Connie, but when he opened his eyes, he saw another woman. He jumped out of the bed and the woman disappeared. She had been wearing a dress from the 1800s that was black with white and red on the sleeves. She had long black curly hair, and she was completely solid. If she hadn't disappeared, he would have thought she was fully human. Dan thinks she was one of the working girls from the brothel days. That was the beginning of hearing disembodied footsteps and seeing a variety of ghosts that included children, a cowboy, and other painted ladies. Cold spots are felt and disembodied voices are heard. There are nose pictures involving perfume and cigar smoke. People claim to be touched, pushed, and scratched.
There's all kinds of stuff going on here. And Dan should have been thankful. Apparently he was getting a massage for free from one of the working girls.
Who doesn't
you know?
like their scalp scratched? I mean, I know he was being caressed. I like to have my head scratched and rubbed.
Yeah, the scratching is a little bit better. But if it was like a full-on scalp massage, I'd be okay with it. It's, she seemed solid and stuff. She wasn't trying to hurt him, I don't think.
She's like, hey, big boy.
And now a little break for a word about one of our sponsors.
The couple decided to create a toy room for the child ghosts. Activity increased after that. They also set up a doll room, which I said earlier. This features dolls from all over. Dan purchased a porcelain doll he named Ginny. This is the doll that's in the green room, which is also called the Honeysuckle Suite. Doll apparently moves around in this room and is found in different places. I heard Dan being interviewed on another podcast, or maybe it was a paranormal show, but he had been asked, if you think the doll's moving around, why don't you put a camera in there to see if you can capture something? So I don't know if they ever bothered to do that. They don't have anything on the website, like a live cam kind of thing. But that would be a great idea if you think something's moving around like that, because you're going to have people watching at all different times of the day, and maybe you will catch it actually doing something. None of us will believe it because nowadays you can fake so much stuff.
Rig it
but
and, AI
at least
and everything.
you would know. The first floor hallway has a workshop at the end, and women always feel uneasy in there. A male ghost haunts the workshop, and Connie describes him as being a grumpy old fart.
Alrighty.
Although he is worse than just yelling, "Get off my lawn." He can be violent. Dan was leading a tour with 7 women, and when he took them in the workshop, the spirit got angry. He didn't want any women in his shop, man. I can understand that, It's kind of like, get off my, I don't know what's in the workshop, my hammer or whatever. Leave my hammer alone.
Okay, Diane.
A woman suddenly said that she saw something peek out of a room and then pull back. Everybody looked in that direction and watched to see if whatever it was would appear again. And sure enough, it did. A small, shadowy child specter walked between 2 rooms. This spirit was followed by a taller spirit dressed like a cowboy. This figure was so big it blocked out the whole hallway. The light was out in the workshop, so Dan flipped it on, and the workshop ghost hurled an object that crashed across the room. One of the women fainted dead out.
Oh, wow. Crash.
Maybe he didn't throw anything across the room. It was just the woman hitting the floor. I don't know. Several of the women ran from the workshop and exited the hotel. They were done with the tour.
Let the bodies hit the floor. Let the bodies hit the floor. Let the bodies hit the floor.
Yeah, you're sounding like one of those parrots.
I love hearing the parrots do that, usually African Greys. Dan says upstairs in the back is the most haunted area of the hotel. Psychics have claimed that a room in that area has given them visions of a man attacking a woman. He grabs her by the throat and pushes her up against the wall. No one knows if he actually ended up killing the woman, but the energy in that room is quite dark. Nick Groff investigated the hotel over 2 nights in his Deathwalker series during season 2. He mostly ran around with what he called his Pukwudgie, which is a glorified spirit box, and tried interacting with the spirits of this man and this woman. Groff repeatedly asked for the man to touch him or try to attack him, and nothing ever happened. Nick did claim to feel nauseous a couple of times and got some interesting stuff to come across the geoport, but nothing earth-shattering. A paralight went off during the night while he was sleeping, and he heard disembodied footsteps in the hall, and then a paranormal music box went off.
Yeah, I definitely didn't care for Nick's investigation of this hotel because it just felt like he was mostly trying to... You're thinking there could be up to 30 spirits here, and I felt like all he was trying to do was engage with this couple and mostly just trying to get something to attack him, which in my brain is, I want something good on camera. Not that he actually wanted to get to what happened here. Did this woman actually get hurt, die?
Right.
That kind of thing. So I was like, see, that's what you get. Nobody even... Really, I felt like he got like hardly any interaction. If you think he was in this hotel for 2 days. And also, I'm like, why would you just... You're talking about hours and hours and hours. We've investigated places where, you move around to different places because you're like, okay, we've done 2 hours in this room. Let's go do something else.
Right.
See if we can get something else happening here. So I'm like, why wouldn't you just try to interact with all different kinds of things when you have that much time? And when he was walking around with, because he has people who make all these special spirit boxes for him and stuff. And he was like, I've got my Pukwudgie. And I'm like, isn't a Pukwudgie a little cryptid creature that they find up in the, what is that triangle that's up in the New England area? I can't remember what it's called, but they have Pukwudgies up there, I thought. So I'm like, oh, I wonder why he called it that. But I guess that's beside the point. Other spirits that might be here include a couple of the infamous outlaws. In March 1887, Emmanuel Clements was shot and killed in a bar in Ballinger by a man named Joseph Townsend. Townsend was ambushed by Jim Killer Miller, who was known as the Deacon, and assassinated. Jim Miller was later hanged by a mob of people in 1909 after he killed a deputy marshal. The Deacon is said to haunt the hotel now and possibly Clements. We will say that the name Emmanuel came up multiple times on Groff's spirit box. So that was interesting to me because it's an unusual name and there's definitely some kind of a connection here. I don't know if he was staying at the hotel when he was killed in a bar in town, and so it was like he was coming back to his room. I don't know if there's something about the hotel that is like a beacon to spirits and that's why they come here, because neither one of those men actually died at the hotel. Could the shadowy cowboy figure seen near the stairs be one of these outlaws? People have taken to calling him Slim. So I guess he's kind of skinny, maybe? He apparently likes to whistle. There's another huge shadow cowboy that acts like a marshal in the place, policing the other ghosts. He is seen everywhere in the hotel. And I'm wondering if this is that big shadow that Dan and that group of women saw when they were in the workshop that blocked out the hallway light.
Slim Shady. Please stand up.
Slim Shady would be a very good nickname for a shadow figure. If it's a shadow figure of a cowboy, we're going to start calling him Slim Shady.
A lady of the evening named Annie hangs out on the second floor in the traveler's suite. She likes to talk on EVPs and has identified herself by name. There's a spirit that likes to stand by the downstairs bathroom, and people call him Glenn. An unidentified old woman wanders the hallways. Several of the child ghosts have been identified as Dennis, who has blonde hair, Benjamin, who is a 9-year-old and loves to talk and play in the playroom, and an unnamed 5-year-old boy who loves trains and the playroom. Several previous owners are thought to be here. Kay Seacrest is one of them, and she generally appears in a dress from the 1800s. One group staying overnight had Dan investigating with them, and Dan asked the spirits to demonstrate the walking of cowboy boots, and sure enough, there were the sounds of boots walking across the floor.
The Ghost and Getaways blog, and what a great name for a blog, investigated, and they reported, "We investigated the first floor, but we spent most of our time on the second floor," which is understandable because I've heard the second floor is where most of the activity takes place. One team member reported a creepy feeling and having unexplained noises on their audio recorder near and in the Lefebvre's master suite. However, we were not able to get enough data to establish validity of the recordings or who it might be. Other than that, there wasn't much to report for the first floor. We just seemed to gravitate to the second floor. In the Pruitt Wildflower Room, team members reported activity on the REM pod and a creepy feeling. I always love it when people describe a creepy feeling. I once had somebody join me to talk about a place, and that's all she said. Like, those were the two things about, yeah, this place, it really gave me a creepy feeling. I'm like, and did anything happen? Well, it just
Felt
gave me this really creepy feeling, and I'm going, okay, I can't really
more than
go
that.
with that. Twice they spent the night in that room and reported activity throughout the night. Nothing was significant or frightening enough to drive them out of the room, but they did not have a quiet night. We spent much of our time in the upstairs hallway and going towards the back, and towards the back is where that kind of violent room is. We had erratic EMF activity and could not find a reason or the source for it. Using a laser grid, we may have seen shadows down towards the end. I say that we may have seen shadows because after a while, the lights kind of play tricks with your eyes. At least it does with me. While we were not able to document shadows with a camera, a few of us are pretty certain we saw something. We also had some hits on the periscope, but they were erratic and did not seem to be in direct response to questions. We used a ghost box as well, but didn't get any responses that seemed to coincide with a direct question. Most of our activity seemed to be with the periscope and K2 meters. So it sounds like nothing really crazy happened for them.
Stephanie Hendricks wrote in September 2024, I recently visited here August 24th, 2024 for an overnight investigation, and I must say this place is definitely haunted. Before we even began our investigation or even setting up our equipment, we heard weird sounds, footsteps, knocks, and just an overall feeling of being watched and followed. Dan gave us the rundown on what all was accessible to us, and then the tour and history of the place. After we did the tour, we went about our way picking our rooms and deciding where we wanted to set up certain equipment and which items like motion-activated lights or motion-activated sound items to put in areas we knew it would definitely trigger the most. I did my own adventure while the other two did things they needed to do, and I must say, even before it got dark, I caught footsteps following me, breathing down my neck, deep heavy feeling of not being wanted, a deep growling sound, and tugged from behind on my shirt.
Somebody didn't want you there for sure. As it got dark, Dan was nice enough to do a spirit box session with us that most definitely brought all the spirits out to play. The voices that came through were insane. The answers we got when we would ask questions were so accurately answered, it definitely made the hairs on my entire body stand up. He also was amazing enough to do a seance session with us. Oh no. And our EMFs were going crazy. The paralight was going so high, we all had a very eerie feeling. We felt heaviness in the room, footsteps outside the room, a scream. Our motion-triggered balls were lighting up like crazy in the doorway and the hallway. A dark shadow appeared in the doorway that one of the people I came with was so terrified, he said he felt as if he was being held down in his chair. There were crying sounds that sounded so clear it's as if the woman was standing right next to us. Dan went about his way and headed into his room, and the three of us started our investigation. Dan has a room called The Box, which is a mixture of the Estes method and his own, where you put on blackened out goggles with light flashing and headphones you put on that are totally noise canceling and a spirit box in a small dark room. No one but me would do it first. This has got to be the most disturbing part of my investigation. Not only was I in total darkness in a room, I was all alone on the second floor as the other two were downstairs watching everything. I began my session, and not even 3 minutes later there was loud footsteps, banging on the door, and mind you, I'm wearing noise-canceling headphones. I was just about to say, weren't they wearing headphones? How did they hear all this? And I was grabbed on my right arm so tightly as if someone was telling me to get up or get out that I threw off my equipment and ran the heck out so fast and did not look back. Wow. Another encounter that I had was in the doll room. I had told Jolita, one of the haunted dolls who's in a glass case, to let me know she knew I was there in some way, that when I came back, I would know either something was off or changed, and that I was going to come later to investigate the room more in depth. I came back about 20 to 30 minutes later, and her head was turned a different direction. Trust me, I had so many more experiences like knocking on my door, seeing movement outside my door, part of a leg foot running away as I opened my door to my room, and then a hard shove out of a room that clearly didn't want me in there. From doors opening and voices telling me to leave now, I would definitely recommend you visit this place and experience what we did.
I love it. She's our people.
Yeah. It was like, holy crap, but hey, you got to visit. Like I said, so much more happened that was totally insane. I will definitely be back. Well, it didn't scare her away, so that's good.
Love it. The Olde Park Hotel has seen over 100 years of history, and some of it hasn't been pleasant. On top of that, many haunted objects have been brought into the hotel, and it runs as a haunted attraction during the Halloween season. Have all these things led to paranormal activity? Is the Olde Park Hotel haunted?
That is for you to decide. Well, it's all the way over on the other side of Texas, but I don't know. It sounds like a pretty interesting place to check out. Almost a guarantee that you're going to have something happen. We'd love to have you guys check out our website at historygoesbump.com. And if you'd like to send us some feedback, you can do that at historygoesbump@gmail.com or at any of our various social media. Please follow us. We're History Goes Bump everywhere, and check out our YouTube channel. We had Michael post this in the Spooktacular Crew. Had something happen in my house. In my bedroom, I heard a voice coming from my right side saying either we're here or they're here in a man's voice. Kind of like Poltergeist. They're here.
No, it would be like, they're here. That's a man's voice, not a little
What
girl.
in the world happened to Heather O'Rourke's voice? I'm an empath and have seen things away from my house, but never heard anything like that before. That was Saturday morning, but nothing since. Not going to actively research at my house unless I have to. I'm like, yeah, that's probably a good idea. Then he further commented, it's not that I haven't had experiences here. I've seen pets that have passed on. I saw one creature that resembled a merflap, like in Fantastic Beasts, but walking down my hallway. I don't want to see anything that looks like a weird beast walking down the hallway of my house. I'm sorry. It felt very neutral, as did this voice I heard. I've seen things out and about and knew it wasn't live, even if it looked like it. But I've never heard anything till now. I would write it off as probably my wife watching a movie in the living room, but I heard it in my right ear, which is my worst ear, and I have severe hearing loss in that ear. My dogs are chill in the house. They don't stare at any spots or corners. Still unpacking what it all means. Oh, very interesting. Thank you for sharing that, Michael. We don't know what it means either.
And update us if you find out.
Yeah. But yes, I don't know that I would actively investigate. I always tell people, do not actively investigate your own home because you don't want to bring in something and get stuck with stuff, and just not a good idea. Want to thank you guys for joining us on this episode. I've been your host, Diane.
And this has been Kelly.
You take care now. Bye-bye. This episode is brought to you by our executive producers.
Dispatches from the Grave Digger.
We want to welcome back Caitlin Giddings. We're going to be putting you in a niche wall. And yes, you're going to be getting your holiday mailing. A lot of people like to come back to make sure they get their special magnet.
Woohoo!
We do one every year, and that's the only way you get it, is being part of our Patreon and getting that Christmas mailing every year. And we want to welcome into the cemetery Sarah Harvey. We're going to be putting you in a chest tomb.
Thank you so much for supporting History Goes Bump. We really could not produce this show without your support.
Join me in the cemetery by becoming an executive producer. You can join on Patreon or PayPal. Check out the Support the Show tab on the website for more information.
Came running in here and booped my leg with her nose.
He encouraged many aspects of the liturgical movement, including congregational singing during the liturgy.
Congregational, not congressional.
Don't you want to see a bunch of senators and congressmen stand up and sing? I mean, they have done it before in the past. Let's do it again.
The hotel would be multi-purposed into a bordello twice.
Bordello. Bordello? Is that like Nutella?
I mean, I just...
Are they slathering women in some weird...
Bordello
spread?
is the stuff for dogs. And I did just take them to the vet, so...
Oh.
It's a little on my mind.
Okay. Okay. That's better than...
It's not Bordello. It's Bordetella, but still.
I shouldn't have gone down the Nutella route, clearly.
Ew.
Which is completely
not
disgusting.
A fan. I'm sure there's a lot of people that would fight us, but
I'm
that's
sure
just our
they
opinion,
would.
including our nephew.
They focused it.
They focused it. They were very focused on it.
They were very focused.